Hello and welcome to another episode of the B2C Movie Show. In this episode we are joined by none other than the legendary micro-budget filmmaker Mark Polonia for an interview on his career spanning 35 years of B-movie filmmaking. Mark, welcome to the show.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me on. I'm glad to be a part of it, so thank you.
For anyone that isn't aware of your work, please tell us a little bit about yourself, Mark.
Well, I make what would be called micro-budget movies. That's typically anything under $50,000. And I've been doing it for the last, since I was 17. Personally, since I was 5 was when I really got interested in doing it. And then when I was 11, my brother and I bought a Super 8 camera. So we were able to start shooting movies. And then at age 17, we made a movie called Splatter Farm. And after that, we just kept making movies, my brother and I. I guess I tell people it's a lifelong passion because it started at such an early age and I really never had any other interest and it really just kind of grew from there. So they say not to put all your eggs in one basket, but I did. And luckily they didn't get scrambled. So
you mentioned when you were 5, you initially discovered a love of film. Tell us a bit about that.
Sure. Actually, I was 5 or 6. I'm pretty sure I was 5. I had no aspirations about filmmaking or being in films. You know, you're just a little kid. I think maybe I'd been one to 2 movies. One of them was Chariots of the Gods. And I remember my dad taking the whole family, which we never did. I'm telling you, I think he thought it was like some Spartacus Ben-Hur gladiator movie because after 5 minutes it started and he made us all get up and leave. And I remember being so upset because I was so into it, like aliens building pyramids. But beyond that, it was a rainy Saturday and I couldn't go outside. So, you know, back then they used to have these monster movie matinees and horror hosts. And I tuned into one maybe halfway through and it turned out to be Godzilla versus The Thing, which was Godzilla versus Mothra retitled. And I remember just being absolutely enamored with what I was seeing. Like, you know, I knew at that age it wasn't real, but I just wondered, how do they do this? And the whole time I'm watching it, you know, some of it was frightening to a 5-year-old, but I remember just thinking out loud, I don't know what this is, but this is what I want to do the rest of my life. And really, that was the seed. And from there, again, it was basically, you know, finding out as much as we could about filmmaking, which was difficult. We had a library within walking distance, and our sister would take us and we'd sign out books about movie making. And we would write scripts because we learned how to write scripts. And then we got a hold of a camera and we started shooting silent movies and we graduated to sound movies. And then video came around, so we graduated to that. So it was always this kind of immersion in this whole thing, which I know sounds weird, you know, for someone so young.
Would you say that these first movies would be an influence? Because when you look your filmography, you mostly do horror movies and did horror movies with your brother. Would that be where that's like that love for horror came about as well then?
Probably, because I think as an adult, you're really influenced by what you experience as a kid. And obviously horror movies are cheaper to make than, you know, lavish science fiction, even though we've made a few. I think, I think looking back, our work is a product of everything we experience. Science fiction movies, horror movies, 50s sci-fi, and then drive-in movies and stuff we saw on HBO. And then when VHS came out, you're just constantly being filled by all this material, and some of it you leave behind, some of it sticks with you. And I think, guys, most of it's subconscious. I don't think you really realize it till you look back and watch something, and then you can make that connection, like, the Roger Corman Poe movies inspired this part of this film, or something like that.
Imagine yourself as one of the crew of this faster-than-light spaceship of the future, sharing their curiosity to know the unknown, their tension, their readiness for inconceivable adventures.
I think at the time we were just trying to get our story on the screen, and we really weren't going, we saw this in a movie, let's try it. Plot-wise, now we would look at technique and attempt things like dolly shots and things and try to emulate that. But I think the subtext of the material is half imagination and half what you're exposed to. And our very early movies, like that we made when we were 11 and 12, and they were just, hey, let's see if we can even aim a camera and shoot something and get an image. And I think it grows from there. I don't think, if you're conscious of it, then you're copying it. And I don't like to do that. I think the best inspiration comes from, it comes from within, and filmmaking is part objective, part technical, part storytelling. And I think all that blends together, if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely. So, but when you started out that young, you must have been limited by the resources you had, and you said you wanted just to try out how can we make something that we've seen already on the screen. Would you say that this limitation kind of held you down, or did it prove more as a challenge how to overcome it?
That's a great question. I think ultimately, and when you're in the thick of it, you don't see it, but I think ultimately it really shaped and trained us to later endeavors and just the fortitude to continue. Because I know so many filmmakers who just give up. They fall by the wayside, and part of it's passion, but a good movie doesn't have to cost $150 million. In fact, some of the best movies cost nothing, because what's driving it is a vision, a passion, and what the materials you have at hand. We had a Super 8 camera for years, and then we had a video camera. And I know people today that say, well, when I get this next sound recorder, when I get this next lens, I'm going to make a movie. And I think we had nothing, and we made a movie that was released nationally across the United States. But to me, that was a challenge. That did not hinder me or my brother or the people that worked with us. We had an idea, we were creative, we were passionate, and we wanted to do it, and nothing was going to stop us. Now, I personally do not consider myself successful, but again, that's objective. I look at Steven Spielberg and look at myself. I'm not successful, but someone starting may look at me and go, wow, look what they did. I want to be like them. So, if you inspire somebody, then you've succeeded, because you can't put a price tag on that. You can set out to achieve anything in the world and maybe not make it, but if someone sees what you do and they say, oh, that movie stunk, I could do better, and they go out and do it, then great, you've succeeded, even if they don't like it. And if they say, wow, I admire these guys, I'm going to try it, and they go out and do it, you've succeeded. So it's a win-win situation. That's how you have to look at it.
Well, if you don't mind, give us some examples of kind of how you developed your your own kind of visual style? I mean, obviously you would have taken inspiration directly or indirectly from a lot of other films and filmmakers at the time. But like you mentioned earlier there about, for example, like copying dolly shots. What were some of the things that you kind of noticed about those early films that you were kind of seeing and going, oh wow, right, I want to do that. I want to learn how to do that. I want to see how that actually fits into a film. How did you develop that kind of style within your filmmaking in those early days?
It was all trial and error. We didn't have a dolly, we didn't have a crane, but we had something with wheels on it, and we put the camera on it and said, let's try this. Push the camera on this wheelchair for 8 feet and let's see what we get. Well, you get the film back and it's out of focus. So next time you learn to adjust the lens as you're doing it. You see shots where cameras, crane up. So you stand on a seesaw and have someone raise it, and you put something in the foreground to make it look like it's moving or sliding across a table. We didn't have track, so we polished the table and we put it on a dish rag and we pulled the rag, and it looks just as good. You have to look at what you want to do and then look around and go, what do I have that could possibly make that work?
Yes.
You're really making movies with spit and glue, but when you look at the shot, you go, oh my God, that works. And then the more movies you make, as you're shooting a scene, you can look at it and go, this would be a great place to push the camera in. So now that you've mastered the technique, regardless of what you're using, now it becomes easier to integrate it into the storytelling process. But you have to overcome the technical side of it first, and then it's a tool for you to use. We do underwater stuff, and before GoPros, the only way you did it was you had to have a housing. Well, we couldn't afford that, but we did have a fish tank. So we emptied the fish tank, put the camera in the fish tank, and pushed the fish tank underwater up to the edge so it didn't leak into the fish tank. And now we're underwater, So you design shots based on that kind of technicality. So it's, we weren't geniuses. We were just desperate to get things looking more professional. And the means by which we did it were way beyond unorthodox, but it didn't matter. All that mattered is that we solved the problem and we got the shot.
That's one of the things actually that we kind of commented on with the Blood Red Planet review that we did, was it felt so much like you guys were doing whatever it was necessary in order to achieve the shot that was necessary to tell the story. And it didn't matter that even if it was just wearing a goddamn dust mask, it was enough to be able to tell the story and to be able to drive it forward.
Damn. Bodies. Hundreds of bodies.
And that was one of the things about that film in particular that we both just fell in love with, was how it was like, you know what, as an audience, just get over it. If you don't like the fact that there's something being done on the cheap, air quotes, it's enough to be able to tell the story, and it's enough to be able to get the shot. And that's something that really, really kind of shines through in your early films. It's quite commendable, and I applaud you for it. It's really, really awesome.
Well, thank you. Yeah, Blood Red Planet was a challenge from the start. Despite the garbage bag cave sets and the water bottle air tanks, that movie cost $1,000. That's all that movie cost. And it was fun to make because filmmakers sometimes get lazy and they get comfortable and they won't do something outside of their comfort zone because they don't know how they're going to do it. And no matter what you do in life, it doesn't have to be filmmaking. If you don't, and I can't stress this enough, if you do not reach beyond what you're capable of, you will never grow. If that means you fall on your face, well, you get back up. I mean, filmmakers always ask me, well, doesn't that bother you when, people shit all over your movies and you on the internet? And I'm like, no, I really don't care, because these are people that probably hate movies that cost $150 million. And
yes,
they say, well, don't you look at it as failure? And my answer is, the only failure would be if you did not try again. Failure is simply an opportunity to try again. And in my book, anyone who makes a movie with nothing and finishes it, even if they don't get it distributed, they deserve some credit, because you know what?
Absolutely.
If you gave me if you gave us, you and I, $150 million, we could make a movie. But you know what? Give George Lucas $3,000 and say, go make a movie. He couldn't do it. I run into so many people. They're like, oh, you must make tons of money. I'm like, well, I hate to disappoint you, but I don't. I have a day job.
May I just interject? Since you mentioned the day job, you do teach students, right?
I work at a university, Mansfield University, and I'm not technically a teacher, but I do instruction with students.
And would you draw much from your movie making experience to your teaching experience towards students?
Absolutely. It's I'm basically handing off all my secrets to these people, and we sit down, we show them how to edit. I've made all the mistakes they don't have to, because, when I was in their position, I didn't have a teacher. It was all trial. I went to the School of Hard Knocks, which is a good teacher school, but sometimes a painful one. So you have an opportunity to share things at a professional level to these people that they necessarily wouldn't get from someone without any experience. So, it's nice to go out with them with a camera and they start setting it up. No, don't do that. Here's why. And it gives you a lot of satisfaction, because I've gotten a lot of compliments from students who are like, man, I learned more from you than anything I ever did in that class, which is great. Again, you share what you know. And I wish I had someone standing over my shoulder saying, oh, don't do that. No, you don't want to do that. Here's why. So I don't have any formal training. I mean, admittedly, I did not go to college. So I didn't need to, because college started for me at age 11. And I saw high school as something I had to do, and couldn't wait to get out of for the weekends to make movies. So.
But I want just to add on this, and you mentioned it before, the fun aspect in making a movie, and it is very, very. It is very obvious that there, especially when watching your early movies like How to Slay a Vampire, Splatter Farm, Blood Red Planet, as we mentioned, there is this tangible sense of just how much fun you and your brother were having making this movie, that it was just this genuine project of pure passion. Now, would you say, were there ever aspects of filmmaking that were a bit less enjoyable, that you were like, I really dislike doing this part of a movie?
That's a great question. Some filmmakers, they're more comfortable on set than they are in post, or vice versa. I guess for me, because I started at such an early age and learned every aspect of it, because not only do I shoot movies, I have a professional day job, just so people don't think we're sitting here rolling in the dough. I have a day job where I actually use my skills in my profession. And I can honestly say there is no part of making a movie I dislike. I love writing. I love coming up with the idea. I love writing it and planning it out and scheduling it and, getting actors. I love being on the set and working with people and getting the shots. I love lighting it. I love sitting down and putting it all together and watching it really come together and happen. And, I'm 52, and for all intents and purposes, we started our career at 17. I, to this day, still have that fascination and just kind of giddy childhood feeling.
That comes through so much in your films. It really, really does.
I wanted to say it is very, very visceral experience seeing your movie, and you can, as I said in my question, you can genuinely feel the enjoyment that went into making the movie.
Yeah, making a movie is a lot of fun. And, as the director, you play a lot of roles and wear different hats. We don't have a 12-person crew. It's usually 2 people and the actor. So, I or my son helps me, and other people, we're doing everything, but it's you as the director, as the ringleader, you have to maintain that sense of energy and that level of fun. And you could probably ask anybody that's worked with us, and they'll say, oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a party. We still have, a lot of work to do every day, but it's the attitude you approach. I've been on sets, not mine, and I've just seen people treated so poorly. I wonder why they just didn't walk off. And that's not, you don't treat people like that, period. That's just plain wrong. But it's when they're giving, you have to be a psychologist, you have to be a friend, you have to be a diplomat. Sometimes you have to be a dictator. And you have to be the person that just holds it all together every day, whether it's a 2-day shoot or a 6-day shoot or a 2-week shoot. People lean on you and need you for different things. All the while, you're trying to set up shots and light things and get tracks set up. And it's a really interesting and exciting process. Every day you're on a set, every step of the way. It never gets old. It never gets boring. There's always a challenge. I don't believe in problems. I always tell everyone there's no such thing as a problem, only a solution. Because if it's a problem, then it holds us back. If there's a solution, we move forward. And you really do have to maintain a sense of forward motion every day on a set, because it's easy to get bogged down and lose traction. And I plan things out to the T, and people like that because they're not sitting around all day shooting 3 lines and they could have been doing something else. It's just fascinating. The whole thing still to this day it's just amazing that you can take an idea, put it on paper, take that paper, transpose it to people saying it and acting it out, and then put it together, add music, add sound, add titles, watch it from beginning to end, and then share it with people. It never gets old. It just never gets old.
What the hell is he saying? You have to speak slowly. We can't understand you.
If I may ask, your brother's passing, obviously, the fact that the two of you were making films together, how did his passing affect your approach to filmmaking and the creative process that you previously had? Did you find it hard to kind of readjust how to approach your projects following the death of your brother?
Oh yeah, that's a lot of people ask me that. It's a tough question, but it's a good question. Because when you're a twin and an identical twin, you're really the same person. That sounds strange, but we could run a set and he could be doing something, I could be doing something, and we both were always on the same page. So when we lost him, it was we made Halloween Night. We're actually in pre-production on that when he passed away. It was the hardest movie I ever had to make. It was, everything about it was difficult. Just not having that symbiotic relationship, that other person to lean on. It really was a difficult process, but I got through it. We got through it, all the people involved. And the next one was a little easier, but it's never easy, and it never will be. And that's something you simply have to resign yourself to. There was a point where I just thought, I'm not going to do this anymore. Literally just at his funeral thought, I'm done. We're done. This is over. And then I thought, if that was me, and he was alive, I wouldn't want him to do that. So, once you get through that process, you realize that you're still on the same path. You just have a heavier burden, and that's really how I look at it. In some regards, he's still there. His spirit is still there. It lives through me, and it would have vice versa. So. It really is. It's a strange feeling and not always a good one, but you simply have to keep going. I think, in a way, what I really gained out of it, well, the only thing I gained out of it was it forced me to be more focused and tactile in the entire process, because now I didn't have anyone else to lean on. We shared different responsibilities on a set, but we still worked together. Now it was all up to me, and that changes it changes how you do things, because now you've got double the burden. So it taught me to be more focused, and I had to train myself to be more efficient with my time in pre-production, on the set, and in post-production. You start to have to rely on yourself a little more, because your other half, who's still part of your whole, isn't there to say, hey, what do you think of this scene? Should we cut this a different way? So it in a way, it changes everything that you do. And a lot of times you're not conscious of it. You're fighting the current just to get to the other side, and you wished, and I always wish he still was there. Sadly, that's not the case.
At what point in the writing process do you kind of feel like you're onto something that you want to move forward with? Please tell us a little bit about that aspect of your creative process.
Well, I mean, lately, I'm fortunate enough that I'm sought out by other companies, and they hire me to produce movies, typically based on an idea or a title they have. When you're playing that game, you have parameters, which is fine. I never take on a project I don't think I can do, and when I do take one on, I give it everything I have. When it comes to more personal projects, the problem when you work in the micro budget world is that, money isn't your friend. So a lot of people try to write what they can afford. And I always write beyond what I can afford, because then that's where the creative aspect kicks in. Where are we going to come up with this? How are we going to do this? We shot a 16 millimeter haunted house movie years ago called The House That Screamed for $5,000, which is nothing for a shot on 16 millimeter movie. But we used our skills at the time to make something out of nothing, but also interject ideas in it that we knew would be challenging, but are good for the story. So I guess what you want to do is, or at least what I try to do, is not sacrifice the story because of limitations, because you can always go back and pare that down. But you really want to just let the ideas flow and come up with a really good script or an interesting script or something you want to do. And then from there, you can look at it from the outside and go, okay, these are the 9 things that are going to be financially challenging. How do we do this? Oh, we know someone that owns this. Oh, I can get a hold of this. Oh, I know how to, we can make a shark and put it in the water, et cetera, et cetera.
sharks have been bad this time of year. Don't look like bite marks. Looks like burn marks.
You don't know. Nobody knows.
How do you then, with such a low budget, how do you then decide on which parts to focus first when making a movie and which parts you can deal with later on in the production or pre-production?
Yeah, a lot of that's driven by what you need on the set. And that's determined by how you block the shot and set it up. So let's say we're shooting Sharkenstein. Well, clearly we don't have the money to buy a gigantic prop, but we can build a puppet. Now on set, we when we're out on a lake in a boat, that puppet isn't going to do us any good. So we know we need a prop fin that we can then match it all together in post-production. So this is where storyboarding comes in, and this is where you have to understand the process. You have to understand what you're going to shoot, how that's going to correlate to what you're going to do later, and how that's going to correlate with what you're doing at the time. So you really have to be thinking in different levels to make sure all this stuff is going to cut together, so to speak. You really have to be able to conceptualize a movie from front to back. And by that, I mean, when you read it, if you already haven't done a location scout, you can at least have an idea of, okay, I know how we're going to shoot this. Here's what we're going to need. Okay, I know how we're going to shoot this. So when I'm reading the script, I'm already seeing it. And being a professional editor and camera person, I already know how I'm going to shoot it. Okay, well, here's how this is going to look. So I already have it in my mind when I get to the set, exactly what we're going to do. And that comes from editing, really. I mean, some directors, they'll just shoot a scene from 40 angles and the editor has to fix it because they really don't know. They don't understand what they really need. And sometimes editors make good directors because they know what it takes to put a movie together. But you have to walk into it with that. What is it going to take to put the scene together? And then you just break it down. You break it down into props. You break it down into locations. Is this scene day? Is it night? Who's in it? Where's it at? How many days do I need this person? Okay, there's a boat. Now we need to go find a boat. What's the closest lake? Okay, how much is the boat going to cost? Can we get a deal for 2 days versus one? You just start to disseminate all this stuff, and it sounds complicated, and it can be, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. I can break a script down in about 2 days and have it all laid out, from locations, actors, props, scheduled shots for a day, meal time, break, close off at the night. It becomes a process that it's second nature after a while. And that's the biggest thing, is planning the picture. Editing a movie isn't hard because there's no time constraints. Shooting the picture is that's where the most pressure is, because you have people on the set, you can't control weather, you have things that can go wrong, you have to adjust stuff, actors don't show up, they don't know their lines, there's a million things to conspire against you, but you just have to bounce back and keep going. So that's why you have to be prepared. That's where the creative meets the controlled, meets the scheduled, meets the technical. That all has to merge on set to get you to post-production. And if any one of those little pieces breaks or falls apart, that's when you can have some problems.
Do you remember this, John?
Yeah, I sure do. This is, of course, the back of Mark Polonia's house. And we had a couple of scenes up here where me and Bryce Kennedy would come up and try to get in the door, which was, of course, locked again.
And that right there is the window he looked through. And he was actually standing on these garbage cans down here.
That's right. Bryce was looking through this window and standing on those garbage cans watching Jeff getting ripped apart.
Is then like a particular aspect of really any of the films that you've made throughout your career that you are the most kind of proud of, in terms of like even just effects or props or anything, something that, given the limitations that you've had and given the restrictions that you would have had throughout your career, is there something that like kind of springs to mind for you that you go like, yeah, do you know what, I nailed that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We shot a movie called Black Mass, which ended up being called Army of Wolves, but that's a whole nother story. But it was a World War II movie, and it's about these soldiers who go across enemy lines, and they find this priest in a church, and there's catacombs under the church, and there's this demon creature flying around, and that movie was a real challenge to make. It's like The Keep meets Poltergeist, and then eventually American Werewolf in London. We had a guy who we went to him, and we said, okay, this guy's a sergeant, this guy's a lieutenant. We rented costumes that he had because he's a reenactor, so everything was accurate. Except the first day, the one guy put on the wrong coat, and after about 4 hours of shooting, he's like, we got a problem. I said, what's the problem? He said, I have the sergeant's jacket on, and he has a corporal's jacket. We put the wrong coats on. I said, that's not a problem. You just got demoted. So, here's the movie that cost, I think by the time we were done, like $2,500. And here we are. We got access to this 18th century church. I don't know how my brother talked this guy into letting us shoot there, but he did, and it was like amazing. We had a great we had Matt Smith, our camera person and cinematographer, and he lit it. Everything just came together, and we had a guy that had just worked on one of the Call of Duty games who did all the visual effects of this like half-rotted corpse flying around, and they stab it with this cross, and it has all this stuff going on, and it's a cheap movie, but you know what? You look at it and go, this isn't bad. This is better than some of the stuff I've seen at the theater. It's really, I think it's great. And we did another movie called Amityville Death House, which I think you could project that movie on a screen and people would pay to go see it. I think those movies cost nothing, but you could stack them against any, bigger budget direct-to-video movie, and they hold their own. I think they're professional, they're well acted, they're well shot. They have some incredible set pieces in them that you don't see in micro-budget movies. So it's funny. I look at it this way: all your movies are like your children, and when I say that, I mean, your children, they don't always turn out the way you want them to, but you love them just the same. And that's the way I look at the movie. I could rip every movie I made apart when I look at it after the fact and go, oh, we should have done this, we should have done that. Well, that's hindsight. You don't have that when you're shooting a movie in 5 days. But in the same breath, I could look at every one of them, even early stuff, and go, wow, that's really good. We did that. And some of it's subconscious. Now, a movie called Hallucinations that we made before Splatterfest, that movie, we could not replicate that today. I don't know how we infused that with some of the atmosphere and some of the dread. It was not conscious, but maybe it wasn't. We didn't realize it. So, even early movies like that, I see things and go, wow, that's not bad.
May I ask then, in terms of contemporary filmmaking, and especially nowadays, how has the pandemic affected your ability to make films? Do you find it difficult to find shooting locations, or do any other restrictions impact your filmmaking today?
Good question. The short answer is no. I made 10 movies last year. You have to write within those parameters, follow guidelines, and be respectful of, health issues. Clean the set down, clean the props down, people wear masks, social distancing. It certainly makes it a little bit more difficult, but it's still possible. The fact that our sets are so small and there isn't that many people on them to begin with helps. So it was a challenge, but after a couple movies, I kind of figured out a routine and the best way to do it. And that's how we move forward. So it has impacted it a bit, but not put a stranglehold on us creatively, if that makes any sense.
There are a lot of YouTube creators who would make movies, and platforms such as YouTube have lowered like the price of entry for filmmakers, so who could enter the filmmaking business and making content. Is that something you think that will play a positive or a negative effect in modern filmmaking?
I think it's a double-edged sword. I think, like you said, with the access being so easy and so cheap now, anyone can do it, and that's great. But that anyone gets lumped in with people who are at my level, who are higher than my level, so it muddies the water. But having said that, it also gives people an opportunity that may not have necessarily had one. I think there's room for everybody. You know, clearly people watch my movies, so they'll watch other stuff. I think the real issue is, as long as independents stay independent, it's a good thing. But the second that the major players move in and muscle people out, that's where it goes downhill. And that happens. It's happening on Amazon. You want to go backwards, it happened with home video. It happened in the actual theatrical distribution of movies. It just takes those guys longer to latch on, but when they do, they basically kick you off the playground. And when some new platform comes along, we're always there to exploit it first because they see no value in it. But then they realize there is, and then they muscle in and make deals with companies like Amazon and Blockbuster Videos, et cetera, and basically strong arm them to not giving us any space, which I call that a monopoly, which I thought was illegal in the United States, but I guess it depends on who you are.
If you had any opportunity to go back in time and change something for any particular film that you had made, what would you have changed and why?
That's an interesting question, and it does necessitate some reflection. I guess I would honestly say I would not change a thing, because everything that we did, despite the limitations, despite personal dilemmas, it led us to where we're at right now. And if you went back and changed one of those things, and you had the power to do it, who knows where you would be? It's easy to predict life when you're standing in the middle of it, but when you look back at it, that's when you really see how things fall into place, whether it was by your hand or by accident or by just a coincidental meeting, whatever. Everything you do, everything you say, it leads you to where you're at. And I'm very happy where I'm at. Do I want to be at a different level? Heck yeah. But I'm content doing what I do because, it's in my control. I always get the number one question I get from filmmakers is, Mark, if you had if Universal came to you and said, look, we're going to give you $150 million, would you sell out and do it? And I think that's a really good question. My answer is, after some thought, first of all, I would not sell out by doing it. And the only reason I would do it is A, to say I did, and B, take all that money and make 1,000 micro-budget movies.
May I ask you then, just in lieu with this question, let's say just hypothetically, if you could ring back in time and talk to a young Mark Polonia who just started out making movies with his brother, what advice would you give that Mark Polonia?
That's a good question. I would probably say you're already halfway there. Keep going, because despite the odds, despite the criticism, despite what may come, you will pursue your dreams, And many people in life cannot say that. I'd tell him, you're on the right path. Keep going.
In terms of where you are at the moment in your career, are there any kind of themes or topics that you've not yet explored in your movies that you would one day like to tackle?
Well, thank you for assuming I have a career. That's a compliment.
Hey, you're still putting the movies out and we're still watching them. So yeah, you're still going.
Wow, that's a good question. I guess, we've tackled science fiction, we tackled horror, we've tackled kind of cult type movies, we've tackled comedies in some regards. As far as something that hasn't been done that I would like to try, I'd like to someday do a remake of Food of the Gods. H.G. Wells' story. There's so much good material there that I don't think has been really exploited well. And I love the Bird Eye Gordon movie. He basically raped the whole story, but you got to give him credit for blowing up rats on screen.
It was a different time.
yeah, you wouldn't get away with that today for one second.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
He was on the right path. I mean, he despite the animal abuse, which I'm certain occurred, I think had he been given a little more money, I think he could have made a much better movie. But what he made was very entertaining, and I think that story has a lot more life in it than it's been given.
Are you, if it's not a secret, then are you working on something at the moment? Is there something we can look forward to?
Yeah, I mean, there's something I can share that is and isn't a secret. Over last September, we shot part 3 to Feeders.
Oh my God! Okay,
whoa.
that is. Oh, yeah,
okay.
That is an exclusive.
You heard it here first. Holy shit!
Yeah, that's coming out sometime this year. But yeah, we signed that with a distributor, and it's sort of we don't really go out there on the mountaintop and shout it because we'd probably get shot by a sniper. But it's safe to say that there will be a Feeders 3 this year. So
brilliant, brilliant.
All right.
So you guys got it first.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate it.
Yeah, my goodness.
Now what are we gonna do? I guess we're stuck here. Not if I can help.
Mark, listen, thank you so much for joining us. Again, it's kind of a big thing for us to even be speaking to you, never mind getting a chance to actually ask you questions. It's a big deal for us, and you've been an absolute gentleman coming on here and answering questions from us, and we thank you humbly.
Well, thank you. Likewise, I would love to talk to you guys again, so let's plan on it.
All right, cool. All right, we'll do that. We will be in touch. Mark, take care of yourself, buddy.
Take care.
Yeah, you too. You too, guys. Stay safe.